thank you, Governor, for coming. And just so you know, on the issue of the Route 53 bridge, people in Norwell and Marshfield, where I live, use that bridge heavily. It's not a Hanover, strictly a Hanover issue. It's a regional issue, and it's real important. Plus, which is a safety issue. Nobody can walk across that. I've got a couple of comments from the perspective of someone who spent a lot of time working with seniors. I'm on the Council on Aging in Marshfield, and I'm an AARP volunteer tax counselor for the elderly. And I'm not speaking for either of those groups, but I want you to know that the senior population that I'm running into has, for purposes here, two major issues. Number one, limited budget, fixed budget, living on retirement. For many people, that's Social Security. So they're very concerned with any expense that may go up. This is not anything new, but that's a critical issue. And the second thing is transportation, especially public transportation, is a growing need as seniors become super seniors and start cutting back on their driving. At our Council on Aging, probably over 25% of our budget, $200,000 budget, is devoted to transportation. Drivers for the vans and what all. We now have GATRA, Greater Attleboro and Taunton Regional Transit Authority, and it's starting up, and it's linked with one of our neighboring towns. So that's a real plus, and we're privileged to be there. Transportation and cost are big things. With those things in mind, I'd like to recommend to you, number one, that to establish credibility with everybody, not just seniors, state government needs to address its reforms first before raising taxes. Yeah, you got to raise the revenue part of it, but it's essential that state government show good faith by passing some legislation on reform to reestablish credibility. Secondly, I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to consider dedicated funds, whether it be paying off the big dig or for transportation projects, so that the money can be tracked. Don't let it go into the general fund.
Amen.
That would, there's no credibility for that.
Absolutely, you're right.
And then finally, I'd like to encourage you to consider sunset provisions in the funding legislation for the, especially for the big dig payoff. And lastly, I'd say keep hammering away at the cost of inaction, as your website has. We need to know, as citizens, what price will we be paying by not changing the system. Thank you very much for being here.
That's great. Thank you.
Oh, I'm Barry Cornwall.
Barry?
From Marshfield.
Thank you. Yeah. One, two, and then...
Barry, could I just interject that your state representative has joined us as well, Jim Cantwell from Marshfield and Situate.
I've learned all the greatest things from Barry.
So Barry was making some really important points about the impact on seniors. I would say the impact on anybody who's on limited incomes and fixed income right now. And I hear that. I'm interested, though, in the juxtaposition between that point you made and the second point you made about the need for transportation services. And you mentioned the Attleboro Regional Transportation Service. We've got some other GATRA. Jeff can talk about some other initiatives, and they are important. But I want to just use that example as a jumping off point, because most people who are expressing, and I think perfectly understandably, the concern about the impact in real lives and the follow-on impact, Bob, of the gas tax increase, both for yourself and what you pay in other goods or services, are also saying we want the services and more of them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's we're going to have to face that, because we don't have that choice anymore. So I think somebody, Dan, wait. I see you, but just wait. We don't, what? We don't, I think sometimes people think that, you know, governors have this room full of cash. And you just have to get me in a good mood. And then I'll write the check. I mean, these are miserable choices that we're having to make, and it does relate to something that Andy asked about, which I will come back to. But the point about reforms being an indispensable part of this, if a bill comes to me that has just a gas tax and doesn't have the extensive reforms we have come to, even if it's my number, I will veto that bill. That is an unacceptable bill. And that's not just about political sales, it's about what we owe the public and what ought to be a marker for any successful organization, which is continuous improvement. We ought to always be looking for continuous improvement. Barry, I don't know if it was you or others who made the point about dedicating the, was it you? That's in the bill. This money is for nothing. In fact, it's dedicated to something called the Transportation Fund. Very transparently, I don't know if that's an adverb, but managed, and only for transportation projects.